Which person sounds more intelligent? Listen carefully.
I think it is a good idea.
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 I think it is a good idea. I think it is a good idea.
They all said the exact same sentence, so why did they sound different to you? Hi, I'm Olivia, and today we're talking about something that we all do often, even without realizing it, judging people by their accents. So what just happened in your mind? Even if you didn't want to judge, you probably had an instant reaction. Maybe you thought that one sounded clearer or more natural or more correct. But here's the key point. The only difference was the accent, not grammar, not meaning, not intelligence. And yet, your brain made a decision. That's because human brains naturally recognize patterns and make quick assumptions and categorize what we hear. One of the biggest reasons we judge accents is familiarity. We feel more comfortable with accents we hear often. For example, if you are exposed to British English QI, it's very common in media. It sounds normal to you, but normal doesn't mean better, it just means you're used to it. On the other hand, when we hear an unfamiliar accent, it may feel harder to understand, and our brain interprets that as less fluent, but actually it's just less familiar. This becomes especially important when it comes to education, especially in non-English speaking countries. In many schools, English is taught with a focus on a correct accent. This happens in many countries, but what they teach as a correct English is also different. In Japan, it's usually American English because, we lost in the, because of the history, but in most of the European countries, it will be British. So students start to think like, okay, this is the right way to sound, or if I don't sound like this, I'm not good. And because of that, speaking might feel risky, and of course, mistakes feel embarrassing, and silence feels safer. Well, for the last one, it might be a typical Japanese thing because of its reading the air culture, but anyways. So even when students understand English, they might say that they can't speak English, not because they lack ability, but because they lack confidence. If you have watched my first episode, you'll notice that I've said the same thing, well, because this is the important context. To speak of my experience, in my school, there's this unspoken idea that speaking English without a Japanese accent is better, especially when it comes to English teachers. And I know that many students look down on an English teacher who has a strong Japanese accent. And also, I admit that I also have that bias yet. But it's also because that a lot of students can pronounce English fluently than the teacher because they are taught the native way of speaking since they were young, but the teacher may not be raised in those environments. Well, whatever the reason is, even though the teacher understands English and teach it every day and can communicate, it still sometimes feel like the English sounded less natural. And that feeling didn't come from logic, but comes from what I was used to, and what I had been taught was correct. But to confess, well, maybe it's an opinion to the education system itself, but even if the teacher doesn't pronounce correctly, they gotta teach the right English to the students and correct the student of they are wrong, right? I think that's why the teachers get antagonized by the students, like, why do we have to be corrected if he's not doing, right? I have a cognitive dissonance in me. I know that we should not judge their ability by their accent, and I'm here talking to inform it, but I still do judge people unintentionally. Getting back to the main flow, this kind of bias has real effects in many cases like business conference or academic presentation. People with strong accents may not be taken seriously or being underestimated. It's not just about language, it's about how people see themselves. On the other hand, there is something that I have to clarify. When a person who is learning or earned a second language is seriously trying to learn the native accent without a negative reason, you can never judge them too. And if you are one of those people who just want to learn British accent because it's cool, then go do it, because I am also one of those people. I am saying to embrace your own accents as an option, not to have negative thoughts for your identity, but I am never forcing you to stick to your primary accent. I know that some people say that they should speak English with an accent affected by your first language because it's your identity, and if you are not doing that, you are abusing your home country. Well, that's wrong. It's your free will to speak in an accent you want. Well, that's why that every single accent should be treated fairly. So, as a reflection, I want you to think about this. What kind of accent do you consider normal? And where did that idea come from? And maybe more importantly, have you ever judged someone based on how they sound? So if this kind of judgment happens so naturally, the question is, what can we do about it? How we can become more aware, change the way we think, and feel more confident in our own voice. That's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. So stay tuned, don't forget to like this video, and subscribe my channel. Thank you for listening to the Embracing Your Accent podcast, and I'll see you in the final episode.